The bright fluorescent lights of Memorial Hospital's maternity ward cast harsh shadows as James Wilson rushed through the corridors. His work boots left muddy prints on the pristine floor, but he didn't care. The nurse had called him at the construction site saying Sarah had gone into early labor, and he'd left everything behind to be there. James wasn't prepared for what he found in room 302. His wife Sarah lay in the hospital bed, her blonde hair matted with sweat, cradling not one but three tiny babies. James froze in the doorway, his tool belt still hanging from his waist. But it wasn't just the unexpected number of babies that made his world stop spinning, it was their appearance. All three newborns were black. "James," Sarah whispered, her blue eyes filling with tears. "Come meet your children." James couldn't move. His mind refused to process what he was seeing. He and Sarah were both white. His family had been in Minnesota for generations, and she came from Swedish immigrants. This wasn't possible. "What kind of joke is this?" His voice came out hoarse, barely controlled. Sarah's smile faltered. "There are babies, James. The doctor said it's rare to have triplets, but they're healthy and—" "Don't." James held up his hand, cutting her off. "Don't you dare lie to me." The rage building inside him made his whole body shake. "Who is he?" "What?" "James, no." Sarah tried to sit up, disturbing one of the babies who started to cry. "There's nobody else. I would never." "Stop lying." James's shout made all three babies start wailing. A nurse poked her head in, concerned, but he waved her away. 5 years of marriage, Sarah. 5 years, and this is how you repay me." Sarah was fully crying now, trying to comfort the distressed infants while pleading with her husband. "James, please listen to me. I don't understand it either, but I swear I've never been with anyone else. These are your children." James looked at the three dark-skinned babies, their tiny fists waving in the air, and felt nothing but betrayal. The future he'd imagined. Teaching his kid to play baseball, working on cars together, family camping trips, crumbled to dust. "I want you out of the house," he said coldly. "Don't bother coming home. I'll have your things packed and left with your sister." "James, no, please." Sarah's voice cracked with desperation. "Where am I supposed to go? They're premature. They need special care. I can't do this alone." "You should have thought about that before you cheated." James turned toward the door, his heart hardening against her sobs. "I'll have divorce papers drawn up by the end of the week." "At least look at them." Sarah begged. "This one has your nose, and look, they'd all have your ears." "James, please." But James was already walking away, each step faster than the last until he was practically running from the hospital. He ignored the nurse's concerned looks and Sarah's crying that echoed down the hallway. In his truck, James sat gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. 5 years of marriage, gone in an instant. They'd been trying for a baby for the last 2 years, and he'd been so excited when Sarah announced her pregnancy. Now he felt like a fool. That night, James drank himself to sleep in their empty house. He ignored the dozens of missed calls from Sarah's family and their mutual friends. When Sarah's sister Amy came to collect her things the next day, she tried to reason with him. "There has to be some explanation," Amy insisted. "Sarah loves you. She would never cheat." "There's only one explanation," James replied bitterly, handing her Sarah's suitcases. "And I want nothing to do with any of them." Within a week, James had filed for divorce. He blocked Sarah's number and all their mutual friends on social media. He threw himself into his construction work, taking every overtime shift available to avoid being alone with his thoughts. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Sarah didn't contest it. She was too busy caring for 3 premature babies who needed round-the-clock attention. James made sure his lawyer specified that he had no paternal rights or responsibilities to the children. As far as James was concerned, that chapter of his life was over. He had no idea that 10 years later, the truth would turn his world upside down once again. Sarah Thompson sat in her small one-bedroom apartment, staring at the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen table. The triplets, now 6 months old, were finally asleep in their shared crib, a second-hand purchase from a local thrift store. The clock showed 2 a.m., but her day wasn't over yet. She still had reports to finish for her work-from-home data entry job. Life as a single mother of 3 was far from what she had imagined when she first learned she was pregnant. Her sister Amy had let them stay for the first 3 months, but Sarah knew she couldn't impose forever. Now she worked 2 jobs, data entry during the baby's sleep times and weekend shifts at a local diner when Amy could watch the children. I don't understand how this happened, she whispered to herself, looking at a photo of James she hadn't been able to bring herself to throw away. The divorce papers had come quickly, and he hadn't even asked for visitation rights. A soft cry from the crib broke her thoughts. Little Maya, the only girl among the triplets, was stirring. Sarah rushed to pick her up before she could wake her brothers, Michael and Marcus. "Shiv, sweetheart," Sarah soothed, rocking her daughter. In the dim light, she could see James's features in Maya's face, the same shaped ears, the same nose. How could he not see it? The next morning, Sarah dragged herself through her routine. Feed the babies, change diapers, try to catch a few minutes of sleep when they napped. Her phone buzzed, another text from her mother. "Have you told him about the doctor's appointment?" Sarah didn't respond. She had stopped trying to contact James months ago. The pediatrician had noticed some unusual birthmarks on all three babies that she wanted to investigate, but Sarah couldn't afford the specialized tests without insurance. James's insurance had covered her until the divorce was finalized, but now she was on her own. Amy arrived around noon, bringing groceries and much-needed adult conversation. "You need to take him to court for child support," she insisted, helping Sarah fold tiny onesies. "And say what?" Sarah asked tiredly. "He doesn't believe they're his. Going to court would just drain what little money I have left. Then do one of those DNA test things. Prove it to him." Sarah shook her head. "He made it clear he wants nothing to do with us. Even if I could prove it." She trailed off, watching Michael grab his brother's toy, leading to a small squabble. "I won't force my children on someone who rejected them before even holding them once." The months turned into a year. Sarah moved to a slightly bigger apartment in a cheaper part of town. She learned to stretch every dollar, shop at discount stores, and accept hand-me-downs from friends with older children. The triplets grew quickly, their personalities emerging more each day. Michael was the leader, always first to try new things. Marcus was quieter, more thoughtful, with a smile that could light up a room. Maya was a perfect mix of both, fierce and gentle in turns. They'd all had James's laugh, though Sarah seemed to be the only one who noticed. One day, while shopping at the grocery store, Sarah ran into James's mother, Eleanor. She hadn't seen her former mother-in-law since before the birth. "Sarah?" Eleanor called out hesitantly, staring at the three toddlers in the shopping cart. Sarah's heart raced, but she forced a smile. "Hello, Eleanor." Eleanor's eyes were fixed on the children, her face pale. "Are these?" "Your grandchildren," Sarah finished quietly. "Would you like to meet them?" But Eleanor backed away, shaking her head. James said, "He told us." She couldn't finish her sentence before hurrying away, leaving her shopping cart abandoned in the aisle. That night, after putting the children to bed, Sarah finally let herself cry. She took out the photo album she'd been keeping. Every milestone, every first smile, first tooth, first step carefully documented. One day, she hoped, someone would want to see these memories. "Your daddy would be so proud," she whispered to her sleeping children, even though she wasn't sure she believed it anymore. If he just knew the truth. But the truth seemed more complicated than even Sarah understood. She had no way of knowing that in a few years, a routine medical test would unlock a mystery that would shake both families to their core and force everyone to confront their own prejudices and assumptions. For now, though, Sarah simply pulled her children's blankets higher, kissed each small forehead, and prepared for another day of facing the world alone. 5 years had passed since that day in the hospital. The triplets were now in kindergarten, bringing new challenges and joys to Sarah's life. She had managed to secure a better-paying job as an administrative assistant, which allowed them to move to a modest 3-bedroom apartment in a good school district. One autumn morning, Sarah sat in the principal's office at Riverside Elementary, listening with growing pride as Mrs. Martinez, the art teacher, explained something remarkable about her children. "Mrs. Thompson, I've been teaching for 20 years, but I've never seen talent like this," Mrs. Martinez said, spreading out 3 paintings on her desk. "All 3 of them, they have an extraordinary gift for art." Sarah looked at the paintings. Michael had drawn a detailed cityscape, Marcus had created a nature scene filled with animals, and Maya had painted an abstract piece bursting with colors. Each showed remarkable skill for 5-year-olds. "They take after their father," Sarah said softly, remembering how James used to sketch building designs in his free time. He was always good at drawing. Mrs. Martinez looked curious but didn't ask about the father's absence. Everyone in their small community knew Sarah as a single mother, and she preferred it that way. At home that evening, Sarah watched her children doing homework at the kitchen table. Despite being triplets, they had grown into distinctly different personalities. Michael was the natural leader, always organizing games and looking out for his siblings. Marcus was the quiet problem solver, figuring out puzzles meant for older children. Maya was the peacemaker, smoothing over any conflicts with her gentle nature. "Mommy," Maya called out, "why don't we have a daddy like Jenny and Tom?" The question Sarah had been dreading for years finally came. She sat down at the table, taking a deep breath. "Your daddy lives far away," she said, sticking to the simple explanation she'd prepared long ago. "But why doesn't he visit?" Michael asked, his dark eyes serious. "Tom's daddy lives far away too, but he comes on weekends." Sarah's heart ached. "Sometimes grown-ups make complicated decisions," she explained carefully. "But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you." It was a white lie, but she couldn't bring herself to tell them the truth, that their father had walked away without ever holding them, that he had denied their existence because of their skin color. Marcus, always the observant one, looked at their family photo on the wall. "We don't look like you, Mommy," he said quietly. Sarah pulled him into a hug. "You look exactly like you're supposed to look. You're perfect just the way you are." That night, after tucking the children in, Sarah found herself looking through old photos again. She had kept a secret album of James's family, knowing the children might want to see it someday. There was so much of him in them, the way Michael stood with his hands on his hips, Marcus's thoughtful frown when concentrating, Maya's creative spirit. The next day at school, the triplets' art was displayed in the hallway for the fall showcase. Other parents stopped to admire their work, often doing double takes when they realized all three masterpieces came from the same family. "They're definitely gifted," their teacher, Ms. Thompson, told Sarah during parent-teacher conferences. "But I'm concerned about something else. The other children have been asking questions, making comments about their appearance compared to yours." Sarah felt her protective instincts rise. "Are they being bullied?" No, Miss Thompson assured her quickly. "They handle it remarkably well. Yesterday, when someone asked why they don't look like you, Maya said, 'Because we're special.' They support each other. I've never seen siblings so connected." Sarah drove home that day feeling both proud and worried. Her children were thriving despite everything, but she knew the questions would only get harder as they grew older. Sometimes she still thought about contacting James, especially when the children achieved something new. But every time she picked up the phone, she remembered his face in the hospital, the disgust in his eyes. What she didn't know was that across town, James had recently started working on a construction project near their school. And one day very soon, you would walk past that fall showcase display, see three familiar names under three extraordinary paintings, and feel the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. But for now, Sarah focused on what she could control, loving her children, protecting them, and preserving their innocence for as long as possible. The truth, whatever it might be, would have to wait. The emergency room at Children's Hospital was quiet at 3 a.m. when Sarah rushed in with 9-year-old Maya. The little girl's fever had spiked dangerously high, and strange purple spots had appeared on her arms and legs. "Something's wrong with my daughter," Sarah told the nurse, her voice shaking. Michael and Marcus sat nearby, refusing to stay home while their sister was sick. The triplets had never been separated for more than a few hours since birth. Dr. Elena Rodriguez examined Maya carefully, her forehead creasing with concern. "How long has she had these spots?" "They started appearing yesterday," Sarah explained, holding Maya's hand. "The fever came tonight." The doctor ordered immediate blood tests. As they waited for results, Maya drifted into an uneasy sleep while her brothers kept vigil. Sarah noticed how pale Marcus had become, and Michael was unusually quiet. "Mrs. Thompson," Dr. Rodriguez called from the doorway. "Could you step outside for a moment?" In the hallway, the doctor showed Sarah the test results. Maya has a rare genetic condition called Harrison-Matthews syndrome. It typically only appears in children with very specific genetic markers. Sarah felt her heart skip. "Is it serious?" "Treatable, if caught early, which we have. But Mrs. Thompson, there's something unusual about Maya's blood work." We'd like to test all three children. Michael and Marcus were tested immediately. The results confirmed Dr. Rodriguez's suspicions. All three children have genetic markers that are extraordinary, she explained. I've never seen this combination before. Would you be willing to let our genetics team study their case? Sarah agreed, hoping it might help Maya. The next day, Dr. James Chen, the hospital's leading geneticist, arrived to take more samples. Mrs. Thompson, he said, studying the results, do you know your family's complete medical history? Sarah shook her head. My parents passed away when I was young. I don't know much about my ancestors. And their father? Sarah hesitated. He's not in the picture. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. The children's genetic makeup is fascinating. They show markers from both European and African ancestry, but arranged in a way I've rarely seen. It's actually quite remarkable. Sarah's mind raced back to that day in the hospital, to James's accusations. What exactly does that mean? It means both parents must have carried these specific genetic combinations, dormant for generations perhaps, but present. When combined, they created this unique expression in your children. Sarah sat down heavily. Are you saying their appearance is a perfect example of genetic recombination? Dr. Chen explained. Sometimes, traits that haven't appeared in families for generations can suddenly manifest when two people with the right genetic combination have children. The implications hit Sarah like a thunderbolt. All these years, the truth had been hidden in their DNA. James wasn't just their father, he had contributed to their appearance just as much as she had. Maya recovered quickly with treatment, but Sarah's mind was spinning with possibilities. Should she try to contact James again? Would he even believe the scientific evidence? Her thoughts were interrupted by Michael tugging on her sleeve. Mom, someone's looking at us through the window. Sarah turned toward the hospital room's window and froze. There, standing in the hallway with a stack of construction plans under his arm, was James. He had aged in the past 9 years, more gray in his hair, lines around his eyes, but she would know him anywhere. Their eyes met through the glass. James looked at the three children. Maya in the hospital bed, Marcus reading a book beside her, Michael standing protectively near their mother, and Sarah saw something shift in his expression. Before she could move, he turned and walked quickly away, but not before Sarah saw his hands shaking. That evening, after the children were asleep, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Is she okay? Jay. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. 9 years of silence, and now this. She thought about the genetic test results, about Dr. Chen's explanation, about all the years of questions and pain. Finally, she typed back, "We need to talk. There's something you need to know." The truth was about to come out, but Sarah had no idea how it would change all their lives. As she watched her sleeping children, she wondered if their family's biggest challenge, and perhaps its greatest healing, was about to begin. The conference room at Children's Hospital felt too small for the tension it contained. Sarah sat at one end of the long table, James at the other. Between them, Dr. Chen spread out genetic test results and family history charts. Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Chen began, what I'm about to explain is a rare but documented genetic phenomenon. He pulled up images on his tablet. These are your children's DNA sequences. Notice these specific markers here and here. James leaned forward, his construction-roughened hands gripping the edge of the table. He hadn't spoken since arriving, just nodded stiffly when Sarah introduced him to the doctor. Both of you, Dr. Chen continued, carry genetic markers from African ancestors. In your cases, these markers remained recessive for generations. But when combined in your children, they became dominant, expressing themselves in physical characteristics. That's impossible, James said, his first words of the meeting. My family's been in Minnesota for generations. We're of Irish descent. Dr. Chen pulled out another document. Actually, Mr. Wilson, we did some research. Your great-great-grandmother on your father's side was from New Orleans. And Mrs. Thompson, your mother's family originated in South Carolina before moving north. Sarah watched James's face as understanding slowly dawned. The doctor continued explaining, pointing out specific genetic markers and showing examples of similar cases throughout history. It's called genetic recombination, Dr. Chen explained. Think of it like shuffling cards. Sometimes you get a combination that hasn't appeared in many generations. James stood abruptly, walking to the window. Sarah could see his reflection, could read the conflict on his face. So you're saying? He started, then stopped. The triplets are absolutely your biological children, Mr. Wilson, Dr. Chen confirmed. The DNA evidence is conclusive. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. 9 years of accusations of doubt, of raising their children alone, all because of something neither of them had known about their own heritage. There's more, Dr. Chen added gently. Maya's condition, Harrison-Matthews syndrome, is inherited. She got it from both of you, though it was dormant in your systems. That's partly why we ran such extensive genetic testing. James turned back to the table, his face pale. Is she going to be okay? With proper treatment, yes, but all 3 children should be monitored. They share similar genetic markers. After Dr. Chen left, Sarah and James sat in heavy silence. 9 years of unspoken words hummed between them. I tried to tell you, Sarah finally said, her voice barely a whisper. That day in the hospital I tried. I know, James replied, his voice rough with emotion. I was stupid and angry, and... God, Sarah, what have I done? They're amazing kids, Sarah said. Michael's the brave one, always looking out for the others. Marcus is so smart. He reads everything he can get his hands on. And Maya, she has your talent for drawing. James wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. Do they hate me? They don't know enough about you to hate you, Sarah answered honestly. They just know their daddy lives far away. James pulled out his phone, showing Sarah the screen. It was a photo of the children's artwork from the school showcase, the one he'd seen before running into them at the hospital. I saw their names and something just. I knew I had to know more. Sarah studied the man she'd once loved, seeing the weight of regret in his shoulders. What happens now? Can I meet them? James asked, then quickly added, Not right away. I know they'll need time. But maybe we could start slow. Sarah thought about all the birthdays, all the school events, all the skinned knees and nightmares he'd missed. But she also thought about her children's questions, their curious eyes when they saw fathers with their kids at the park. We'll need to do this carefully, she said. They're old enough to understand some things, but this will be a lot for them to process. James nodded, pulling out his wallet and removing a worn photograph, their wedding day. I never could throw this away, he admitted, even when I was wrong about everything. As they began discussing how to move forward, neither noticed Dr. Chen watching through the window, smiling slightly. In his years of practice, he'd seen science reveal many truths, but few as powerful as this one, a truth that might help heal a family torn apart by prejudice and misunderstanding. Sarah sat on her living room couch, surrounded by her children, trying to find the right words. It had been a week since the meeting with Dr. Chen, and after careful consideration, she decided the children deserved to know the truth. Remember how you always asked about your daddy? Sarah began, her heart pounding. Well, I have something important to tell you about him. 3 pairs of eyes focused intently on her. Maya, still recovering from her hospital stay, leaned against her mother's shoulder. Michael sat cross-legged on the floor, while Marcus perched on the armchair, clutching his favorite book. Your daddy's name is James Wilson, Sarah continued, and he wants to meet you. The reaction was immediate. Maya straightened up, Michael jumped to his feet, and Marcus's book slipped from his hands. Really? Michael asked, his voice a mix of excitement and suspicion. Why now? Sarah took a deep breath. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes because they don't understand things. Your daddy made a mistake because he didn't know something very important about himself. She explained, in terms they could understand, about genes and family history. She showed them the family tree Dr. Chen had created, pointing out their ancestors from different parts of the world. So Daddy didn't know he had African great-great-grandparents? Marcus asked, always quick to understand. No, he didn't. And when you were born, he got confused and scared because he didn't understand. Maya's lower lip trembled. He didn't want us because of how we look. Sarah pulled her daughter close. He made a wrong choice because he didn't know the truth. But now he does, and he feels very sorry. He wants to make things right. Michael, ever the protector, crossed his arms. What if he leaves again? He knows he can't just walk in and out of your lives, Sarah assured them. That's why we're going to take things slowly. Only if you want to meet him. The children huddled together, having one of their silent conversations that Sarah had never quite understood. Finally, Marcus spoke up. Can we see a picture of him first? Sarah pulled out her phone, showing them a recent photo James had sent. The children crowded around, studying their father's face. He has the same ears as us, Maya exclaimed. And his nose is like Michael's, Marcus added. While the children discussed their newfound resemblances to their father, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from James. How did they take it? Before she could respond, Maya asked, Can we write him a letter? The suggestion sparked enthusiasm from all three. They spent the next hour crafting a letter together, each contributing their thoughts. Maya drew a family portrait, Michael wrote about their school activities, and Marcus added questions about James's life. Sarah watched them work, her heart both heavy and hopeful. She remembered James's face when he learned the truth, the way he'd broken down in the hospital parking lot after their meeting. I've missed everything, he'd said, leaning against his truck. Their first words, first steps, first day of school. How do I make up for that? You start by being here now, she told him. The children finished their letter, proudly showing it to Sarah. At the bottom, they'd all signed their names. Michael, Marcus, and Maya Wilson Thompson. Can we send it today? Maya asked eagerly. Sarah nodded, taking a photo of the letter and sending it to James. His response came quickly. Thank you. It's more than I deserve. That night, after putting the children to bed, Sarah sat in her quiet living room, looking at old photos. There was so much healing ahead, so many conversations to have, so much pain to work through. But for the first time in 9 years, she felt like their family story might have a different ending than she'd imagined. Her phone buzzed again. James had sent a photo of himself holding their letter, tears visible in his eyes. The message read, I know I can't fix the past, but I promise to be there for their future, if they'll let me. Sarah looked at the children's bedroom doors, behind which 3 young lives were about to change again. But this time, she hoped, the change would bring healing instead of hurt, understanding instead of confusion, and love instead of loss. The truth had finally emerged, but the real journey was just beginning. The children's park buzzed with weekend activity, but one picnic table sat apart from the crowds. James arrived first, pacing nervously, carrying 3 carefully wrapped packages. Sarah pulled up 15 minutes later in her worn sedan, the triplets peering anxiously through the windows. Remember, Sarah told them before getting out, you can leave whenever you want. Just squeeze my hand if you feel uncomfortable. The children nodded solemnly. They prepared for this moment for weeks, with help from a family therapist Dr. Chen had recommended. James watched them approach, his hands trembling. Maya walked between her brothers, who had positioned themselves protectively on either side. When they reached the table, nobody spoke for several long moments. Hi, James finally managed, his voice cracking. I'm your father. Michael stepped forward first, studying James's face. You look older than in the picture Mom showed us. A surprised laugh escaped James. Yes, I suppose I do. Marcus pointed to James's work boots. You build things? Yes, I'm a construction supervisor now. I help build buildings and bridges. Maya, who had been hiding slightly behind her mother, peeked out. Do you really draw building plans like Mom said? James's face lit up. I do. I heard you're quite the artist yourself. The ice slowly began to melt. James showed them his sketch pad, and Maya shyly shared some of her drawings. Michael asked about the biggest building James had ever worked on, while Marcus wanted to know about the mathematics involved in construction. Sarah watched from the edge of the group, her heart a mixture of emotions. James had brought each child a gift, art supplies for Maya, a model construction set for Michael, and an engineering book for Marcus. He clearly paid attention to everything she told him about their interests. Why did you think we weren't yours? Marcus suddenly asked, his quiet voice cutting through the conversation. The question they'd all been dreading hung in the air. James set down his sketchpad, taking a deep breath. I made a terrible mistake, he said slowly. I didn't understand something about myself, about our family history. I let fear and ignorance make me walk away from the 3 most precious gifts I've ever received. But you know now? Maya asked. Yes, and I'll regret what I did for the rest of my life. I can't change the past, but I'd like to be part of your future, if you'll let me. Michael, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke up. Mom cried a lot when we were little. We could hear her at night sometimes. James's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. Your mom is the strongest person I know. She did an amazing job raising you alone when I should have been there helping. Did you cry too? Maya asked innocently. James wiped his eyes. Yes, I did. Missing you, even when I didn't understand, it left a hole in my heart. The conversation continued, sometimes awkward, sometimes easier. They shared sandwiches and stories. James showed them photos of their grandparents, whom they'd never met. The children told him about school, their friends, their hopes and dreams. As the afternoon wore on, Maya fell asleep against James's shoulder, an unexpected moment of trust that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Michael remained watchful, but had stopped acting as a barrier between James and his siblings. Marcus had pulled out his new book and was asking James to explain some of the concepts. When it was time to leave, James helped pack up their things. Can we do this again? He asked hesitantly. The children looked at Sarah, who nodded. Maybe next weekend, she suggested. The children have an art show at school on Saturday. I'll be there, James promised. Front row. As they walked back to their cars, Maya turned and ran back to James, giving him a quick hug before darting away. James stood frozen, overwhelmed by the simple gesture. Sarah strapped the children into their seats, listening to them chatter about their father. Before closing her door, she turned to James. Thank you for not making promises you can't keep. James nodded. I know I have to earn their trust, and yours. I won't let them down again. As both cars pulled away from the park, a new chapter was beginning. It wouldn't be easy. There were still hurt feelings to heal, trust to rebuild, and relationships to forge. But the first step had been taken, and with it came hope for a future none of them had dared to imagine just a few months ago. 1 year had passed since that first meeting in the park. The Wilson-Thompson family gathered in the backyard of James's new house, which he had purposely bought just 10 minutes from Sarah's apartment. The occasion was the Triplets' 10th birthday party. Maya stood at an easel, teaching her grandmother Eleanor how to paint. The elderly woman, who had initially struggled to accept her grandchildren, now visited every weekend. Michael helped James set up a miniature construction site display he had built for the party, while Marcus explained the physics of bridge building to fascinated classmates. Sarah watched from the patio, remembering how much had changed in a year. There had been difficult moments, times when the children's anger about the past bubbled up, days when old hurts threatened to derail their progress. But they had faced each challenge together, with the help of their family therapist and unwavering commitment to healing. Penny for your thoughts? James asked, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. Just thinking about how far we've come, Sarah replied, accepting the cup. Did you ever imagine this a year ago? James shook his head. I didn't dare hope for this much. Having them call me Dad for the first time last month. I still tear up thinking about it. Their conversation was interrupted by Eleanor's excited call. Come look at what Maya painted. The gathering crowded around Maya's easel. She had created a family portrait, not just of the immediate family, but including grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins from both sides. What made it special was how she had drawn their family tree branches connecting everyone, with dates and places marking their ancestors' origins. Look, Maya pointed proudly. That's great-great-grandma Marie from New Orleans, and there's great-great-grandpa Thomas from South Carolina. James hugged his daughter, marveling at how she had transformed their family's complex history into something beautiful. The painting would later hang in the hospital's genetic research department, Dr. Chen having requested it as a teaching tool. The afternoon continued with cake and presents. The children had grown more confident over the year. Michael no longer felt he had to be the constant protector. Marcus had opened up more socially, and Maya's art had flourished with her father's encouragement. James had kept every promise he made. He attended every school event, helped with homework, and even coached their science club's engineering team. He and Sarah had developed a strong co-parenting relationship, their past hurt gradually replaced by mutual respect and understanding. As the party wound down, James gathered everyone for an announcement. I have something special to share, he said, pulling out 3 envelopes. These are the official papers showing I've added all three of you to my family health insurance. But more importantly," he paused, emotion thick in his voice, "they're also the papers legally restoring my parental rights, if you'll have me." The triplets launched themselves at their father, creating a group hug that soon included Sarah, Eleanor, and the rest of the extended family. Later that evening, after the guests had left and the children were inside playing with their new gifts, Sarah found James sitting alone on the patio steps. "You okay?" she asked. "Better than okay," he replied. "I was just thinking about that day in the hospital. How close I came to losing all of this forever because of ignorance and prejudice." Sarah sat beside him. "But you learned. You changed. That's what matters to them now." Inside, they could hear the children laughing. Maya was teaching her brothers to draw, Michael was planning their next family construction project, and Marcus was reading about genetics, determined to become a doctor like Dr. Chen. "Our story," James said thoughtfully, "it's bigger than just us, isn't it? It's about how love is stronger than prejudice, how understanding can overcome ignorance." Sarah nodded. "And how it's never too late to make things right." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set on another family day. The past couldn't be changed, but the future stretched out before them, full of promise. Their family hadn't turned out the way anyone had expected, but it had become something even more beautiful, a testament to growth, forgiveness, and the power of truth to heal even the deepest wounds. In the end, the color of love wasn't black or white, it was every shade in between, just like their family. The end.